On Seth Speaks, and if you want a man of courage, he certainly fits the bill. He's the gay serviceman, Steve Snyder-Hill. People always sing your introduction.
What's that? No, I've never had that done before.
Okay, so Steve Snyder-Hill. So first of all, say the name of your book for everybody.
It is Soldier Change from the Closet to the Forefront of the Gay Rights Movement.
And it's on everywhere. You get Amazon. It's looked it up. Very easy to get. Okay, so the dealio is you went into the Army, I assume willingly, right? You weren't. You're not like 1,000 years old. You weren't, okay.
I kind of am, but I just keep my age.
Well, you still got it. I guess you went into the Army. How old were you when you went to the Army?
Well, it was 1988 when I went in, so I was just over 18 years old.
And why did you go into the Army?
I went in the Army. Well, my dad had served, and my brother was a police officer, so I think that we just come from a line of military. And I wanted to go to college, too, so I knew that was a way to pay for it.
Oh, because they'll pay when you get out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you went in, and did you know you were gay when you were 18?
You know, I think that part of the book will kind of explain to people the process that somebody comes to terms with themselves, because I don't think that anybody really just knows you're gay. I think that you have to come to terms with different feelings growing up and understand what those feelings are. So I knew that I always called it a darkness because I didn't know why I felt the way that I did and why it was different for me. But it was just terrifying as a kid growing up, not understanding what it was. But living in a straight world, Upper Sandusky, Ohio. So a really, really small, very, very small.
I went to Oberlin, and I feel like Sandusky was nearby. Am I crazy?
No, see, this is what's bad. Like, even people from Ohio think it's Sandusky, but it's Upper Sandusky, which is actually just a blip. My parents and I one night got into an argument, and I went in the next day to school, and the principal said, "I heard you and your parents fought last night."
Oh my God!
So, it's very, very tiny.
So it's little Sandusky, Ohio.
Very, very.
Okay, so the point is, you were still coming to grips with when you were 18, and in those days, 1998, the rule was you just can't be gay in the Army, period.
Right. They would ask you once if you were gay, and then you would answer once, and then, and the way that I was asked was very derogatory, but basically, yeah, you just say no, and then you wouldn't deal with it again.
So then time went on, and then Clinton said he was going to allow gays to be in the military, and then like in 1980 he backed off of it, even though he was elected on that platform, and then he backed off of it, and he's like, I'll come up with a compromise that's actually worse, which was Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Now, why was Don't Ask, Don't Tell worse than just not being allowed?
Well, I think that the intention of it was to advance the movement to accepting gay people in the military, but I think that for the first time it was a law that actually allowed people to kick people out if you didn't follow the rules. So the rules were you weren't allowed to say that you were gay, you weren't allowed to get married, and you weren't allowed to have gay sex is basically the three rules.
Well, that was the rule beforehand, right?
No, well, it was that you basically said you weren't gay once, and then nobody had anything to back the fact that now they had an actual thing that had in the rule book that you weren't allowed to do these three things. So it became a witch hunt. So then over 14,000 people were kicked out after Don't Ask, Don't Tell was in effect. So it was much more different. We were excited. We thought it was an inclusive thing, but it actually turned out to be the opposite.
Now, when you say we, was it you mean other gay
Well,
people?
soldiers, yeah, soldiers in general. Okay. One thing that I always say, and I think it's funny, is that Don't Ask, Don't Tell, Army values that they teach us are honor, integrity, and courage. And Don't Ask, Don't Tell was a policy that actually told you not to have honor, not to lie, basically, and not to be courageous. So it was a policy exactly the opposite of what
the Army stood for.
Yeah.
So eventually, you were, I guess in the Army, you were sort of in the closet. You couldn't say anything. Were you dating people at the time? Were you keeping it all just on the down low? What were you doing?
Well, it goes through two phases. So I've been in war twice, and so the first war that I was in was Operation Desert Storm. So I think that I'd always suppressed the feeling or knowing that I was gay. And one of the most profound moments, and I talk about this in my book, is that we were under artillery fire, and there was artillery hitting on the left and the right. And as a kid, I was basically a kid. I thought, I'm going to die today. I really felt like that. I looked and I saw this artillery homing in on us. So I sunk down into my track just thinking it's going to happen. And I looked up at a picture of my brother and his girlfriend. And that hit me. That was the first time that I was actually able to confront the fact that I was gay myself, because it hit me looking at them thinking, I might die today and I've never ever let myself love somebody. And that's the way that I felt. I felt like that this is it, and I've never ever been able to come to terms with myself. So that's when I hit rock bottom to finally come to terms with myself. Basically, came out of the closet. I got out of the military for a bit, went to college, and I came out. And then I decided to get back into the military later.
But even though you'd come out, didn't you think they were going to find out since you'd come out in college? Like, people would now know?
Well, here's the thing is that I was out at the time, so it didn't matter. So I wasn't thinking I was going back in at the time, but once I graduated, I decided that the military was a great place, and that since it helped fund my college, that I could come back in as an officer at that point. So that's when I had to make a big decision to go back into the closet. And I can tell you, it's a lot easier to go through anything that I've ever had to do in my life, but to go back into the closet was so hard. You know, I mean, I remember peeling a sticker off my bumper, you know, and that sticker, it was like a symbolic thing. That sticker did not want to come off. It chipped, and I was like just sitting there digging it off. And
what did the sticker say? I heart gays?
You know, it was like an HRC.
Okay, you were around campaign. Now, when you came out, did you come out to your parents at this point?
No, I came out to my brother first because, you know, I mean, it's scary. Nobody can understand that you actually feel like you're going to lose your parents' love. And some people do.
I was going to say, yeah, it happens all the time, sadly.
It's so sad to think. I mean, a lot of people think, how could you ever quit loving your child or whatever? But we go through that. We're scared that we'll lose our parents' love. So I came out to who I felt was safe at the time, so I came out to my brother first. And then he told my parent, he came out for me.
Mom, with a power mouth.
Yeah, so yeah, that was a little bit. You never know what it's like to come home and see a blinking message on your answering machine and hear it say, "This is Mom. Tommy told us what you said. Call me." Yeah, it was pretty.
Shit. Did you see that message?
I thought, no, I did not save it.
Yeah.
I remember pulling my head over my covers, and I had my cat at the time. It sounds a little cliche, but I had my cat at the time, and I sat there, and I remember holding her, thinking, you know, you'll love me no matter what, you know. And I really did. I cried, and I couldn't even call my mom, and I was thinking that this pet gives me unconditional love, and I say that in my book. I throw an acknowledgement to my pets because I had to leave in deployments, and they couldn't explain to them why I was going to be gone for a year. And I said, you know, but these pets love you unconditionally. If only humans could do the same.
100% support and adopt a shelter pet. I beg of you all. All right, so back to your thing. So you go back to the Army, this whole don't ask, don't tell thing, and then finally, thank the Lord, they say, okay, gays are now allowed in the military.
Well, it was in stages. So I was deployed, and it was December, and that's when I was deployed. And I was over there, and I heard that Don't Ask, Don't Tell was in the process of being repealed. So basically, some things had happened between my now husband, and he was a boyfriend at the time, but we were on Skype together, and mortars would go off, you know, and then a big mortar would hit. And I would basically say, I've got to go. That was a mortar.
It happens to me all the time when I'm on Skype.
So I would cut off, and here's Josh on the other end thinking, is somebody even going to call me? You know, I don't even think they'll call me.
Right, because he's not like listed as like your significant other. Oh shit, yeah.
Well, and it even goes more profound than that. In the book I talk about when we got deployed, I mean, there were so many things that were so, you just can't understand. Like, when I got deployed, basically, Josh and I, our last time we could see each other before I went to war, we had to hide under an escalator while all the families were out there hugging and all the wives were exchanging information. We were crying underneath an escalator at the airport, trying not to show our emotions or let anybody see us in our little hiding hole.
And then also, by the way, it's a whole movie, like TV show Army Wives. Like, all these wives have this whole coalition where they can like find comfort, and he couldn't.
Right, and they were out there doing that. They were embracing. They were all giving each other information. And Josh, you know, shamefully was my brother if anybody asked, and it was just hard. So then I got on the plane, and it's the first chapter that I talked about. So I'm sitting on the plane, and I'm looking around at all these people, and I'm thinking, 20 years ago, I was here. I was getting on a plane and going to Iraq, and it's 20 years later. You know, I mean, it's one of those things where you think in your life, you're like, you know, I'm getting older. Can I do this again? And I looked around, and I thought, the average age difference of when I came before and when I'm coming now to Iraq is the age of these people that I'm going to war with, which was kind of profound for me, being an older person or whatever. So basically, all of a sudden, I got snapped into reality when somebody got on the intercom of the plane, because it was all soldiers, and somebody was screwing around, and they do that once in a while in the military. We like to do that. But basically, they got on and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight's in-flight movie is going to be Brokeback Mountain." It was a joke to them, you know, and everybody on that plane just started laughing. Like, they would never show Brokeback Mountain to a plane full of Army people. And I can't tell you the empty feeling that you have knowing you're going to war again, and these are your family. These are the people that are there. They're who is going to protect you against anybody that wants to kill you, and that they think of you like that. I can't tell you how horrible and empty that makes you feel. And it was just something that really, it was just one of the many stories in that book that basically shows what bubbled up to what happened at the GOP debate.
Right, so that's the big deal. So they finally take away don't ask, don't tell, and finally allowed to be gay in the military, but that left open 1,000 questions. So how did you get involved with the video for the GOP? What happened?
Well, interestingly enough, so those mortars hit. So Josh and I decided that if something happens, that we wanted to be married. I came home for leave. We get an R&R, so we come home for 15 days. So I came home, and we're best friends. You know, I mean, he's back there right now. He should have came out here with me, but we're best friends. And we definitely, when we were home for that 15 days, I said, you know, I told you that if you waited for me and I went to war, that we would be married. And we said we would do it tomorrow if we could. So then all of a sudden we got this brainchild to call Washington, D.C. and find out how long it would take for us to get married. And so they said that there was a week wait, but we didn't have a week because I had to go back. And he said, well, what if one of you is going back to war? And she said, well, they can do a waiver. And she said, that would probably be a good reason. And then he hung up, and I said, did you tell him we were gay? And he was like, no. And so he called her back and said, does it matter if we're gay? You know, because that's just the way you think. When you're gay, you always think that you're, you know, there might be rules for other people, and then you might get your lower rule or whatever. So anyway, we rushed to Washington, D.C., and we decided to get married at the grave of Leonard Matlovich. It was very special to us. It was very private, because Leonard was a tech sergeant that was one of the first people that got kicked out of the military for being gay, and he fought back. I mean, he fought at a time when it wasn't popular opinion.
When was this? What year?
And he won. It was in the 70s, basically.
Wow.
And then he basically died. When he died, you couldn't be married. You couldn't legally be married. You couldn't legally serve your country out. You know, so we decided that we were going to get married at his gravesite. I know it sounds creepy that you get married in a graveyard.
No, I think it's great. That's a lot of honor. It's great.
But we did. It was private. It was us and one friend, and we got married. And I put this ring on, and I said, I'm not going to take this ring off for anybody. So I went back to Iraq wearing this ring, so proud of it. But I didn't want anybody, you know, I mean, I knew that this was going to raise a lot of questions, and people were going to say, why don't you go get benefits at S1? And then I'd have to dodge more questions than I'd ever dodged.
Because you were allowed to be gay at that point.
No.
Oh, you weren't. So you were married.
It was May. It was May.
I see.
So basically, it was building up. Now, the reason we decided to is because we didn't know our fate. I could have died. He could have been in a car wreck. You know, I mean, there was a soldier that lost one of his family members, and they got to go home on an emergency R&R. And I couldn't help but think that if something happened to Josh while I was deployed, and they called and said that he died, the Army would say, no, you can't go home. He's a friend. Yeah. So basically, we get married, and we went back to Iraq, and then all of a sudden, I saw on TV that the presidential candidates were saying that they were going to reinstate Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
You mean repeal it?
They were going to reinstate it if it got repealed. So they were starting their campaigns.
Oh, the Republican candidates.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So we knew. Yeah, sorry. We knew it was going to be repealed. And here's one of the profound things, and I like to talk about this. I think that the book actually makes you see eyes through a totally different perspective than you would normally. But when I was over there serving my country for the second time over a span of 26 years, you know, I'm sitting there waiting, and I'm really excited that for once in my life I'm not going to have to worry that I'm going to be kicked out of the military if somebody finds an email or finds a picture or whatever. And so basically, they couldn't decide on a repeal date because they didn't want to affect the morale of the soldiers who were currently over there serving. That just shows you that gay people are always second thought.
It's like, what about you that's serving?
It's like nobody had to sit there and listen to a joke like that on the plane, or had to hide these pictures. You know, in my own house, I had a drill, and Josh knows the drill, is that if somebody called me and said they were coming over and they were from the military, one of my friends, we would run around and hide pictures. We would seriously run around and hide pictures.
Terrifying.
And you know, I mean, we'd be holding hands, and I'd see somebody and we'd rip hands down. And there's so many stories like that. And it's just like, you know, that was our life. That was how we lived. And
this whole book, it's so great because this book is making it so clear to people that I think are like, what's the big deal? Like, it's so great how personal and clear you're making it, like the crazy. Talk about this dark space, this dark cloud you're under for like your whole life, basically, and the stress. It's like being a spy for no reason.
Well, you know, I mean, even when people saw me ask that question that night, I think that people initially thought that it was to make a statement. People thought I've had people accuse me for not even being in the military. They said, "Oh, he's not even a soldier. The Democrats planted him." I've heard so many things, and you know, I mean, that night that was one of the hardest things in my life that I've ever had to do.
Well, talk about what it actually was, in case people don't know what it is.
Okay, so basically we're getting close to where they're saying they're going to reinstate the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell before it even got repealed.
Mm-hmm.
So then I said, somebody reviewed my book and they said, this book makes you just shake your hands in anger and say, damn it, somebody's got to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what I was like, that all these people were saying that they were going to come out, and that, these people are going to, it's like dangling cheese in front of you, and then you take it, and then all of a sudden they reinstate it, then what?
Mm.
So basically I recorded a question, and the question was, I said in 2010 when I was deployed to Iraq, I had to lie about who I was because I didn't want to lose my job because I'm a gay soldier. I said that under one of your presidencies, do you intend to circumvent the progress that's been made for gay and lesbian soldiers in the military? So I recorded it, sent it, and it blew up on Google and on Fox, and people were just people were passionate, people were hateful, and just completely writing all this stuff. So basically, a couple days before the primary, I didn't know it was going to be aired or not. I got an email, and the email was from Google. Have you guys ever gotten an email from Google? I mean, seriously, it was from Google. I was like, what the heck? Google just wrote me an email.
Is it Google at Google?
It was like Google. So anyway, the email basically said, and just saying it almost makes me want to vomit, but it said, we like your question, but we want you to ask it again and show your face. Because the primary will be 2 days after the repeal, and you'll be allowed to show your face, and we would like you to do that.
Oh my God.
And I wasn't prepared to do that. None of this has ever been about me or about, I wanted the question to be there. Immediately, my first thought is, no way. I'm not doing. Nobody here knows that I'm gay. I've been hiding this from people for 20 years. I've been lying about it. I've been in the military part of it. So I wasn't about to do that. So basically, Josh, the fuel to my fire, always said, what are you going to do? We just got married. Like, there's nothing we can do to take this back. If somebody doesn't confront them on this hateful platform that they're saying, if somebody doesn't call them on it and saying, what are you going to do? What before you become the president, what are you going to do? So we re-recorded the video, and when I clicked send, my life pretty much flashed in front of my eyes because I didn't know what this would mean.
Oh my God.
So the night of the debate, Josh and I, the night of the courage. The night of the debate, Josh and I watched, and we got through the first hour, and part of me was relieved. I thought maybe they aren't going to air it. That I was like, maybe
There wasn't Clint Eastwood night, was it?
no. Different night.
Crazy. All right, go on.
Anyway, so we're watching it, and then she comes back on and says, next up, social issues. And I got right on Skype, and I said, Josh, what do you think that means? And so we started watching it, and then Megyn Kelly comes on TV, and she said, the next question we have comes from a soldier serving in Iraq.
Oh my God.
And it raised a whole lot of controversy online. And I'm sitting in Iraq at 4 o'clock in the morning watching it at live air with
By
Josh.
yourself? Oh,
yeah,
God.
by myself, watching this. And they air the question, and then the audience booed. It's not everybody in the audience, but there were people that booed the question
What are they
right after.
booing? Like, literally, what are they doing? Seriously, just asking a
Well,
question like,
here's the thing. Now, here's what is going to be really surprising to people that read the book, and I think that it's one of the most profound things that I talk about, is that the booing offended America intensely, because nobody would ever boo a soldier serving their country, let alone 2 wars over 26 years. That wasn't what got me. What got me was that Rick Santorum, when he answered that question, he said that it was a special privilege that I was asking for to serve my country. And he said, they're asking for a special privilege, and he reduced my 26-year honorable career with the military, that's a highly decorated career, he reduced that night to sex. And I can't tell you how offended and how sick that answer made me. And not only that, but everybody in the audience stood up and cheered that answer. So, there's the booing, but then there's also the cheers that I can't tell you if any one of you or any one of anybody was reduced to their sex life and nothing else that they did mattered. I can't tell you how horrible that would make you feel. So really, the booing is not the issue. I mean, it is definitely
one of the issues.
Yeah, it is. But I mean,
so it's this whole Republican audience is literally standing up to him saying that a 20-year soldier, you did it as they did you a favor by letting you serve for 20
yeah,
years?
he said it was a special privilege.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know if Rick has ever had to run around his house and hide pictures in his own house.
Did he ever serve in the military?
No.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so keep going. So after this happened, I'm sure By the way, what did you think the hell was going to happen the next day to you?
You know, honestly, it was one of those things where the courage took over and it wasn't really giving me reasonable thought at the time. So after it happened, I looked at the clock and I said, Josh, maybe nobody saw it. Well, I knew everybody in Iraq was still, you know, I mean, it was pretty early there. So I thought maybe nobody saw it. And then so Josh started writing me. He's like, oh my God. He's like, get on Google right now. And he's like, Google Soldier, the boot. And it's, you know, pops up like 5-6 hits. And I'm like, uh-oh, I think people did see it. And then he's like, about 30 minutes later, you could Google the word gay. And I was the first hit.
Oh, wow. I'm not.
I was not out to anybody. I mean, I can't tell you how I was just not prepared for that. And then even that day, like, I didn't know how I was going to be able to face anybody because I lied to these people for all these years. And so I went over to the chow hall that has like 30 monitors all over the place. And I went into this chow hall with thousands of people, sat down, and I was just kept my head down thinking maybe nobody saw this, maybe nobody saw it. And all of a sudden I heard myself echoing on all those TVs as the news started re-showing it. And it just kept happening. I mean, that happened probably 6 times while I was over there, where I was just standing there and all of a sudden see yourself on everything. And all these people are just like looking around and just like, you know, kind of like everybody's staring at you.
Were you like, it's my twin? Like, what was your
You know, honestly, I don't even know how to describe it. I mean, it was definitely, it was hard. It's hard to come out to people. It's hard to be able to say, I'm gay. But to be able to do it in such a profound way to everybody at once. In a lot of ways, it's easy to just get it done.
I was gonna say,
Like 6 billion people, you don't have to worry about it now. But I mean, it was very awkward because, you know, these people, I lied to them for years. I was unloading bags after, it was still kind of an awkward phase where nobody really wanted to say anything or talk about it. We all have green Army duffel bags, and I'm up there helping people unload them. And I picked up a duffel bag, and it had a rainbow sticker around it. And I stopped, and I was like, just for the record, guys, this is not my bag. And everybody just busted out laughing, you know, like loosen the moment a little bit. And then,
oh wait, whose was it? Pauline?
I don't know. Anyway, another soda. So anyway, but one of the neat stories about it is that, so one of my really good friends in Iraq, or she's been a good friend for a really long time, is that I could not face her because I thought, I've lied to this woman so many years. She's asked me about my relationships, she's asked me about my family, and I've lied to her. And I was like, this is going to be really bad to tell, confront her. She's like, Captain Hill, and she came up and she hugged me and she said, I love you no matter what. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. And so the next week we were at church together, and she said, Steve, if you could, I got to tell you something. And she said, I need to be honest with you. I've been lying to you about something too. And I said, what? And she said, the same thing. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I'm serious. I was so, I couldn't even understand what was coming out of her mouth. This woman I'd known for 10 years persecuted me under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and I persecuted her because we always asked each other about our families. And she could have been an ally. She could have been one person that understood what I was going through.
You were actually close to her, but you were actually both.
But that policy kept us lying to each other.
Oh
So,
my God.
so that's one of a billion. I mean, I talk in the story about talking to the chaplain. I talk about having conversations with a really, really conservative guy that considers Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, and Glenn Beck to be the 3 wise men. So we talk about these conversations, and he had to confront me after this, and we had these engaging conversations that were just so real. And so many cool things, like the Army PAO that talked to me about how to engage the media basically told me he was supposed to meet with me for half an hour. He ended up meeting with me for an entire day and listening to all these stories that I've been telling you.
So there's definitely, it's not all horrific, this book at all.
No. It's a lot of inspiring things, you know. And this guy basically told me that his son just came out to him. He disclosed that to me. And he said, listening to you talk makes me think that I understand my son better. And I said, no, wait a minute. I said, your son grew up the same macho way you did. He grew up and society taught him the same thing that they taught you about gay people. I said, your son has to unlearn that before he can even learn to accept himself. I said, now you understand your son better. And so he looked at me and he said, if you ever write a book, he said, I am definitely going to read this thing. And he was one of the reasons I decided to put it all in there.
Okay, so say the name of the book again.
It is Soldier of Change, From the Closet to the Forefront of the Gay Rights Movement.
And your name is Steve Snyder-Hill. Hill.
That hyphen's very important. Josh and I had to fight for that in Ohio because they didn't want to let us get our names hyphenated. We put marriage for our reason, and they said you can't put that. And I had a friend that changed her name in Ohio and put because my name is stupid. And they accepted that reason. And because we put that we were married, they thought we were trying to circumvent Ohio's marriage. So that is part of our activism. Josh and I took couples to the Supreme Court, and they were married right before the DOMA hearings. There's a lot of stories in there about what we continue to do. We're continuing to fight.
I want James to hyphenate his name, but for some reason he doesn't want the name Rudetsky attached to it. All right, get the book. Thank you, Stephen Snyder-Hill. Bravo!
Thank you.